Hey everybody, welcome back to Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. Man, I am back from Salt Lake City Comic-Con. It happened last weekend. Thank you very much to those organizers for having me out again. They had me out for their FanX Spring Show, and it was a great opportunity to do great conversations with Marty Pasco, my good friend, and Marv Wolfman. And we had great talks about comics and television, and it was great to check in with those guys. Same thing happened this fall. As I had the opportunity to have conversations with Joe Rubenstein, which will be coming up in a couple days. But today's conversation, Mike Zeck and John Beatty, the wonderful art team that were responsible for runs on Captain America, of course, Marvel's Secret Wars, The Punisher, lots of other Marvel projects, great Marvel covers between the two of them, even a little DC work. And this was wonderful. It was my first opportunity to talk to Mike and John. And I made the most of it. We get their origin story and some fun conversation from from Salt Lake City in this great conversation on today's Word Balloon. In some ways, the television season has begun, and two shows that I was anticipating have already started. Let's go with the good. What I would say is the overall good right now. I'm a big fan of The Orville, Seth MacFarlane's obvious Star Trek parody. It's not quite as funny as Galaxy Quest, and I think it has room to improve as far as the comedy goes. But it's lighthearted adventure in Star Trek vein, and I think they do a great job in terms of combining the comedy and the sci-fi stories. And in fact, 3 episodes in, I think they even hit an interesting moral issue in their 3rd episode that I thought they handled quite well. I laugh at the critics that say it's neither fish or fowl. They have to decide if it has to be a comedy or it has to be an adventure series. Bullshit. It's doing fine, doing both. First seasons are clunky. I think they've introduced some interesting characters that I think have a great chance to develop and become more fully formed. But at 3 episodes in, I think they're doing a great job. The security officer is a very funny character. Their big warrior character, kind of in that Worf Star Trek vein, is a very fun, interesting character. And they even gave an interesting moral dilemma with his character. If you didn't see it in episode 3, I think Seth is great as the captain. I think Adrian Pilecki is very good as his ex-wife first officer. So if you're now watching it, I'm not sure why, because I think it's funny as hell, and I recommend it. The other show, of course, Star Trek Discovery. 2 episodes in. I may have already said this on a couple other friends' podcasts. I'm on the Wrong Reel podcast. That just came out today. James Hancock, really nice guy, hell of a film freak. We had a really great conversation and talked about Star Trek Discovery, along with my favorite Walter Matthau movies, some of his action and police procedural movies that I don't think get their due. And also, we talked, of course, comics, because he wanted to talk about comics. But Star Trek Discovery came in that conversation. So if you already heard that, forgive me if I'm repeating myself. But I watched both episodes. I have CBS All Access. I will watch the entire series. I liked the first 2 episodes mostly, and I'd give it a B+, and I thought it was a very good pilot as far as, the big strokes of the 2 episodes. But I really think CBS blew it only showing part 1 on TV, because that played like a tease. You didn't really get a full story. And I think to expect mainstream people to come along for the journey, they should have gotten both episodes for free. Because the first 2 episodes play like a prologue to the rest of the series. It has a conclusion that if you want to jump off, you've got a reasonable story and you know where things are going. And you can make an honest judgment of, do I want to follow this new character, Michael Burnham? Because it's very much first person, which is interesting. We mostly have gotten, it's always about the captain in a lot of ways on all the Star Trek spin-offs and original series. But also we had stories, certainly as we got past the original series, that were about other members of the crew, and you really understood more of the dynamics of the family. The original series obviously afforded us that with their movies. At least 2 episodes in, we know about the first captain, Michelle Yeoh, and we know about Michael Burnham, the main character of Star Trek Discovery. Again, I think you're given enough of a satisfying story for the first 2 episodes, but CBS blew it. And I don't know if we'll ever get word on numbers, because even Netflix every now and then does reveal numbers on their shows. But this being their first show, I'm guessing that we probably won't. But we'll see if this is a success or a failure, 13 episodes moving on. But I got a little quibbles. I'll save them for maybe future episodes and things. And maybe at the halfway point, I'll probably have a couple friends on that are also Star Trek people, and we'll go over what we like and don't like about the new series. But I would say if you're on the fence and not sure if you're going to watch it, I would at least watch the second episode before deciding. So, again, I know I'm asking you to spend money, but it's $5.99 or $4.99 for CBS All Access with commercials. The commercials aren't that annoying. I'm satisfied. I also like The Good Fight, their other show that they've produced as far as new shows specifically for the platform. The spinoff from The Good Wife, of course, with Christine Bernansky, Delroy Lindo, and a very all-star cast. Nyambe from Mike and Molly, who I got to meet in San Diego at Comic-Con, is great in the show. Just 9 episodes, but it's a tight lawyer show, so I was kind of impressed by that. But, I'm going to be on the ride for Star Trek Discovery, and we'll talk more about it here on Word Balloon. But now let's talk to our friend Mike Zeck and John Beatty on this episode of Word Balloon, brought to you by InStock Trades at InStockTrades.com. There's some great books available at great prices at InStock Trades. Are you hip to Kyle Starks? Kyle Starks is a very funny writer that has been cranking out creator-owned books, and they're really fun. They're great action books, but there's a lot of humor in them as well. He's got a great cartoony style. And Rock Candy Mountain Volume 1 by he and Chris Schweitzer is available now at a great price. It's just $4.99 from InStockTrades.com. And I'm telling you, this guy is just really, really funny. And he will be on Word Balloon soon. I got to meet him at Tony Moore's last Cincinnati Comic-Con last year, and shame on me that I haven't had him on the show yet. But very funny guy, and love his comics. Rock Candy Mountain, it takes place on a train. It's during World War II, and good action, plus, as he says, hobo fights, jokes, and locomotive excitement. I'm in. And you should be too. $4.99 for Volume 1 of Rock Candy Mountain from InStockTrades.com. You can get Planet Hulk, the omnibus, Greg Pak's epic, and it is 42% off, just $58. My good friend Jeff Lemire is back with a new book, Royal City. This is an incredible soap opera that has some supernatural mystery going on, but also talks about factory towns. And it's a really good social comment on today, without really getting very political, but really just, again, the social side of what's happening to a lot of our middle-sized cities that relied on industry to employ the town. And I love it. It's great. It's about a family that gets kind of messed up with some tragedy and in their family. And I can't recommend it enough. It's 50% off, also just $4.99. You can get the Absolute Justice League Origin hardcover from Jeff Johns and Jim Lee. It's 360 pages, and it's an Absolute edition, so there's going to be some great back matter in there, I'm sure. But it is 50% off. It's $49.99. I should. I'll tell you what. On the back commercial, we'll look up some Mike Zeck product and give you some clues on what you should get at InStockTrades.com at great deals and great prices. InStockTrades.com. Word Balloon is also brought to you by the League of Word Balloon listeners. Thank you very much, League, for your support. Thanks for helping me out on the Salt Lake City trip and other trips that are coming. I'm going to New York Comic-Con. I have no panels scheduled. I'm not on any panels, nothing. I'm just going to be roaming around in the press junkets and also Artist Alley, making connections and hopefully getting some great content for upcoming Word Balloon episodes. So I hope to see you there. If you see me and you're a listener, please stop by and say hello. Let me thank you directly for listening and supporting Word Balloon. But if you want to help Word Balloon out and support the cause, if you can spare it, Word Balloon is free. But if you want to help out by subscribing, patreon.com/wordballoon, or click on the Patreon ad at wordballoon.com. Thank you very much, as always, League of Word Balloon listeners. Your ranks grow each week, and I appreciate it as I try to move Word Balloon ahead and bring you more content. I mean, that's what I've been trying to do these last few months in particular, where we've added more programming. I've got the time and I've got the resources, so I'm happy to crank out more Word Balloon for your listening pleasure. Thanks again for your support, League of Word Balloon listeners. All right, let's pick things up now with Mike Zeck and John Beatty on Word Balloon.
We'll have an intimate discussion, but I hope people have questions. If not, if you ever listen to my podcast, I can go till the cows come home, and especially having two great guests as we do today. So I'm very excited to have the guys here, and was really thrilled to get the opportunity to moderate this panel. Thanks for coming. My name is John Suntress, and I host the Word Balloon podcast. And Mike, I told John, use the microphone because I'm recording for the podcast purposes, so I want to make sure that we get the echo. But no, this is a great opportunity to talk to two guys that were very important in the history of Marvel Comics, and also some interesting contributions as well to DC. But very pleased to have John Beatty and Mike Zeck for our listening pleasure today. Thanks for coming, guys.
Thank you. Interesting contributions to DC.
Well, honestly, I want to.
I've never heard it described that way.
Well, no, I mean it in a positive way, but we'll get to the DC. Because honestly, I was at your website, Mike, and KGB Beast, and certainly some great covers and stuff. But I was trying to remember as a guy who's been reading and looking at your guys' stuff for a few decades, like a lot of the DC stuff. I mean, I primarily think of you guys as Marvel guys.
Yeah. Most people do, because I think once we left Marvel, a lot of people stopped looking for our stuff, I think.
That's not true.
Yeah.
Did you both together? Let's start with the DC stuff, because it's kind of a shorter list. KGB Beast, did you guys both work on that, or just Mike?
No, that was just Mike.
Mike?
It was just me. Once I started venturing away from Marvel, I think, I'd kind of done the characters I wanted to do at Marvel, and mostly the characters I wanted to do were at Marvel. But I think everyone wants to at least do one Batman, and I did. So I started out with those covers. I didn't do the interiors of that series. But later on, I did do a two-part Legends of the Dark Knight with Stephen Grant, the Punisher writer.
Yes, indeed. And we're going to get to the Punisher run that you guys did as well. Mm-hmm. Did someone else design KG Beast?
Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, then and then tell me about your Legends of the Dark Knight story. What was? Do you remember what it was about?
Yeah, it was. We were back in prison again. Stephen and I always liked more the crime genre in a way. And from the Punisher, we started out in prison, but that wasn't just because we wanted to. That was kind of because the last writers to handle the Punisher just turned him into a crazy maniac kind of guy, and so we felt we had to start that way, from prison, and I was fine with it. I kind of like prison movies anyway, so it gave me a chance to do my prison movie. But like everything else, I think I got typecast in a way then, because then it seemed like if there was anyone in prison, then they'd call me, to do the story. And it was that way with guns after the Punisher too. Since I tried to put somewhat realistic guns into his hands, then I was typecast as the big guns guy. Everybody was doing a guns character, and DC always wanted to sort of have their Punisher, and that's why I ended up doing about 2.5 years worth of covers for Deathstroke the Terminator.
Yes.
What was the other character? I'm forgetting his name now, that had the red visor. Another gun character there.
Hitman?
Hitman? No. Vigilante.
Oh.
Vigilante.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, but
was it the cowboy Greg Saunders Golden Age Vigilante, or was it the
newer
the Marv Wolfman one that created
the skin tights?
Yeah, Adrian Chase. He almost had like a ski mask almost look or whatever.
But I always felt like DC did the mistake they were making on these guys, that they were hoping to be the Punisher, was they always put them in full mask. You wouldn't see their face. You would see one eye of Deathstroke. You saw nothing of Vigilante, and I think part of the Punisher popularity was that you could see his face.
Right.
Yeah,
Frank was a regular guy. The Vigilante, though, I thought was a really interesting character, and especially, man, a dark ending. he kills himself, if you guys don't remember. And I've spoken to Marv Wolfman about that, and it's like, wow, man, that's that. And I mean, that would be interesting. I wonder if they would allow that kind of violent death. I don't know.
Well, we did it in Craven.
Yes, you did, and I want to talk about Craven, absolutely. It's on my cheat sheet. Let's go back to the beginning, if we could, for both of you. John, first of all, John, how did you guys first start collaborating?
Well, that goes back quite a few years, or decades, I should say. I first noticed Mike's artwork in, I think, some fanzines, Rocket's Blast Comics Collector.
Fantastic.
And
early 70s, meaning.
Understood. Yeah. That's great. What kind of work were you doing for, or what kind of, just obviously fan kind of pinups and everything, Mike?
Yeah, I grew up in South Florida, and I was still in South Florida at that time, and the RBCC, Rocket's Blast Comic Collector, was in Miami, so that was kind of like my local fanzine, and that became my outlet for my fan art.
Were those things, guys, were they almost like legal sheets that were stapled together? Because I always love early fanzines and newsletters in the desktop publishing kind of world, and how homemade those great things were.
I did see those, and many of them were like that. But the RBCC was actually close to more like a professional magazine in many ways. More so than others, and it was pretty well respected as a fanzine as well.
Okay, so pick up the story, John.
Yeah.
So, this was around the time, Comics Buyer's Guide was going strong, and that was like the weekly thing where you didn't have the internet, of course, so you got your news from that. And I think that's where I first saw the RBCC, and I think I ordered an issue or so, and I don't know, there was something of Mike's in there that I really liked, and I started trying to find more of them, and eventually I did. And I wrote a fan letter. I didn't pay attention to where it was being published, even though it was, in there. I was in Daytona Beach, Florida. It was down in Miami, and maybe I did know where it was, but I didn't know where Mike was. And so I think the publisher, Vince, was it Vince? Or
no, that was GB Love was actually the publisher.
Yeah.
And Jim Van Hijs was.
Jim.
Oh,
he
wow.
gave you my fan letter, right? Didn't he give you? He just handed it to you because they gave it or something.
I can't remember. He either forwarded it or handed it to me.
And so I don't know, a few weeks, maybe a month, I got a letter back, and it was sticking up out my mailbox, and it said Zeck, and I kind of got nervous, and I picked it up, and the first thing I saw was Hollywood, and I went, California, because that's the only Hollywood I knew. And I was 15, so I didn't know there was a Hollywood, Florida.
I hear you, man.
And so then I saw Hollywood, Florida, and I was like, that's odd. I have no idea where that is, I found out it was South Florida. And Mike had, I think I mentioned something about inking. Maybe I sent Mike some samples of what I did, and he put tracing paper on it and corrected some stuff. And he had sent me some, maybe a couple pages of pencils from a issue of Master of Kung Fu.
Wow.
He had just done for me to, see some pencils and work on them.
That's cool.
He saw a little bit of potential, I guess, in me even at that young age, or he was just, being nice. So maybe a little bit of both.
Well, then prior to that, because if it was Master of Kung Fu, I'm interested, Mike, in your time at Charlton. Because Charlton's fascinating. I mean, we all know it as the Blue Beetle and Question, Home, and Captain Atom, and some of those other great characters. But I love kind of the seamy side of Charlton, and I don't know how much exposure you had to the operation in Derby, Connecticut, because it literally was a mob organization. They published a lot of, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, they published a lot of magazines, and really didn't care what the content necessarily was in the comics. They literally just wanted to keep the presses running, and comics were kind of an afterthought. And luckily, it was people like Dick Giordano and Ditko and some of the great. Giordano was the editor that kind of cultivated the action heroes. But as I understand it, you did a lot of the horror stuff.
Yeah, and by the time I started getting work there, Giordano had already transitioned over to DC Comics. So the editor-in-chief, we'll call him, I guess, was George Wildman, the Popeye artist at the time. And, Nick Cuddy was there, and Bill Pearson were there, and they were kind of the office, and there wasn't much more going there. But know that I was still down in Florida at that time, so I really wasn't privy to some of the stuff you mentioned about Charlton. I knew their comics, and I was willing to, if they were willing to give me work, I was willing to do the work because I just wanted to break in. So I was very happy that those guys saw enough potential to give me work. And they, it actually started out with their animated books, the Popeye and Blondie and the Flintstones and those. They had little 2-page text stories, and then they just had a few spot illustrations in them. So I did a little bit of that while I was waiting to get the horror stories, and then they came soon after. And you're right in this your comment about them just sort of wanting to pump the comics out, keep the presses going. Even though there were editors there, I wasn't really edited. They would send me a script for an 8-page horror story, and they wanted to get it back, penciled, inked, and lettered, just ready to go. They didn't care to see the pencils, they didn't care to see the inks, they just sent it back, ready to give to the woman in the office there that was doing the hand-separated colors.
Wow.
So, I was on my own. It was kind of like throw me into the deep end of the pool in a way, because I wasn't a letterer, and it was. But say what you will, it was. I was very happy to have that training ground. I think I needed the few years that I was working with Charlton, and no money. The 3 disciplines, penciling, inking, and lettering, all totaled $41 a page.
Wow.
For the whole thing. Yeah.
Wow. And I always get the guys mixed up who scripted over at Charlton, because I think of Pete Morrissey, who created Thunderbolt as well. Yeah. And am I right, Joe Gill, the policeman?
Joe Gill was their workhorse.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That guy, seriously, ridiculously prolific.
Yeah.
You would just crank out 8-page stories and whatever they needed, and really, workhorse. But there was some fun, ideas, I think, as he would crank those out.
Mm-hmm.
So that's excellent, man. That's very cool. So I did some. I heard you on some other panels that have been videotaped over the years, and I understand that you went to a convention to present your portfolio to Marvel. Who at Marvel saw your first work?
I don't remember who. I was just trying to show it to guys. This was the first convention I went to was the 1971 Phil Suling July 4th convention in New York, kind of the San Diego of its time.
Absolutely.
And I did try to get to. They didn't have a setup where they were really looking at portfolios or anything. I was just trying to catch editors, writers, what have you, just like people have always done, I guess. Sure. Just trying to catch them, put my work in front of them. I tell you though, that was 71. You know what? And let me back up there, because the 71, I wasn't that interested. It was 71, it was almost more of a fan experience for me. That was more the thing. A buddy of mine, we went up and we were going to fill in some of our comic book collection. We made costumes to do the costume contest.
What'd you go as? Gotta ask.
Black Bolt.
Fantastic. There we go. Awesome.
Right?
Yeah.
Had the tuning fork on your head and everything?
I did. Yeah.
Attaboy.
Yeah. Spent months on that costume, and then we just slayed it. I got first place, and my buddy got second place.
That's fantastic.
As Dead Man, yeah.
What kind of prize did they give you for this?
You know what they gave me? A Rip Kirby Daily by Alex Raymond.
Wow. Yeah. Holy cow.
Yeah.
Man, that's fantastic.
And I turned it over, and they had like a price on it from then. It was $90.
I'm impressed. Do you still have it?
No.
Oh, that's amazing.
No,
though,
I think
dude.
I sold that to Russ Cochran. I flipped it. That was an early flip.
Fantastic, man. Jeez. Well, so was Master of Kung Fu your first Marvel work?
Yeah, that was first Marvel work. Going back, it's actually going back to RBCC. I told you it was pretty well respected. Roy Thomas had a subscription to it, as well as some other professionals. And the very first thing I had published at Marvel was because Roy noticed one of my Conan illustrations on an RBCC cover, and he just called him up. He says, "Hey, I'd like to use that on an inside frontispiece on the Conan magazine."
Wow.
And I said, "Yeah,
hell
great."
yeah, that's fantastic.
Said, "Here I go, going to Marvel." But this was even before as I was getting work for Charlton.
Okay.
And that led to a few more of those inside illustrations, but it didn't lead to color comics, and didn't lead to that much work in the black and whites either.
Okay.
But I was glad that Roy saw something, there that he liked, and even at that time, like I said, I was working for Charlton. There was a big Miami Beach convention, and since I was something of a professional working at Charlton, I was a guest, but the other guests were Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, and Neil Adams. Coming down to that all together.
Welcome aboard.
Yeah, really. Holy cow.
So, and the thing about that, talk about the shift from Charlton to Marvel, was all those guys were very gracious to me there, but Stan more so than anyone. He saw I had like a spread of one of my 8-page stories, and I had done some artwork for the convention as well, for their signs and things like that, some more humorous things. And man, he was just gushing over my work, and it's the first time I met Stan, obviously. And I was thinking, well, gosh, he sounds just like that guy in the soapbox saying, what a great guy. And
called you true believer.
Yeah, kind of like that, And then he was commenting on my sign art, all of that stuff. He says, "You should be working for Marvel." I said, "Yeah, nice." But only half believing, what he's telling me and stuff. But that man got on the phone in front of me and called Marvel.
Holy cow!
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
Yeah, and told him that I was there and that they needed to give me work at Marvel. So Stan Lee became my superhero that day in 1975. But and now we're going to go back to Marv Wolfman. That was Marv Wolfman's very short time as editor-in-chief in 1975, and he didn't like my stuff.
Wow!
Yeah, so I still didn't get color work, even though Stan himself recommended me. No go. So the end of that is that I waited. Marv was short-lived there, and then Archie Goodwin came in.
The great Archie Goodwin, absolutely.
Yeah, I know, very great. Yeah, no better man, no better editor, no better writer than Archie Goodwin. But he was willing to give me a chance, and he gave me at first a 5-page color tryout, and that happened to be just a small little Thanos story that was laying around, and I did that, and then they just waited a while and looking for a place to just put it, and that happened to be in Logan's Run 6. They had 5 extra pages, and there was never, that no one ever mentioned that. No one hardly brought that stuff up to me until now, the more recent Thanos popularity. And now,
Sure.
Now
and it's been reprinted in the Thanos collection.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, every science fiction thing that they do now in omnibus or whatever form, they put that little 5-page story in there.
Fantastic.
So I'm getting these checks for $2 every once in a while. That thing really paid off.
Too funny, man.
Yeah.
So when did John join you on Master of Kung Fu then?
Well, he didn't join me on Master of Kung Fu, but going back to his story, I did see the potential, and then he planned a trip up to. I had moved to Connecticut at that point to Because once...
But we got to go back to the Miami conventions. Because you were still... Did you go to Connecticut and then you came back down for the Miami show still?
Well, I would still come down for conventions, but the trip to Connecticut was... I did my couple years at Charlton. Charlton stopped publishing original work. They just went to reprints.
Yep.
So it was more important than ever, but it was good timing in a way, because that's when when Archie had come in, and he gave me that, and then the first thing he called me on was a Master of Kung Fu. Canadian artist Jim Craig was on the book at that time, but he wasn't meeting the deadlines, and Archie just called me apologizing, saying, he's not going to make the deadline. We have a script, but we would need it in a week.
Wow.
A whole book in a week.
26 pages? 22 pages?
I think it was 17.
17? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But he was like...
Still?
Yeah, it was a strange conversation, because it was like he didn't want me to do it, but he needed someone to do it. But what am I going to say? That was going to be my foot in the door, fully in the door. I only had a toe in the door before that. So, I took it. I stayed up for a week doing that thing, and then he sent it to Jim Mooney to ink it, and I'm sure he had less than a week. He probably had 3 days to ink the thing. It was horrible, but we pumped it out, and that was the beginning of things. That then, as Jim would miss deadlines, I'd either do a portion of the book or maybe do another fill-in issue, but it was always these rush things that I was doing. But that, having the foot in the door, I just decided, well, I'm going to go up within commute distance to New York, and that's going to cement. That'll help cement my work at Marvel. And then I thought, as soon as I do that, I'll just run back to Florida, because I didn't want to go north. I didn't want the winters or anything. But I ended up staying up there about 25 years after I went up. So I overstayed my initial prediction anyway. But yeah, so Kung Fu, and in the meantime, John's, we're still corresponding, and
except for this 2-month or 3-month period of time when he was moving.
When I was doing the move, yeah.
Sure. And he called me one night, and I was like, "This isn't Mike Zeck."
Oh yeah, I called him.
He called me up, and he's like, "How's it going?" I said, "Who is this?" He goes, "It's Mike." I said, "Mike who?" He goes, "Mike Zeck." I said, "No, it's not." He goes, "Yeah, it is." I said, "Where you been?" He goes, "I've been moving." I said, "Where to?" And he said, "Connecticut." I said, "Oh." So, yeah.
It's going to be a little tougher to get your pages down to you and everything.
Well, but what that grew to is that he planned a trip up to visit, and
it was at one of the Miami shows, because Mike kind of showed my work in at Marvel.
Okay.
When it got where, he could kind of, guys upcoming, just kind of get feedback, and then he would give me feedback. And finally at one of the Miami shows, I think it was maybe 79 or 80, Shooter was there, and he said, well,
it wouldn't have been 80 because we were good. I was transitioning to Cap, so it was still late 70s.
Okay, then. 78, 79.
Yeah, but my first trip was in 1980 up there, July.
Was I still doing Kung Fu then?
Yep, because I did that cover over Lightbox that Jim bought.
I thought that was still 79.
Remember the rhyme, Beatty and 80?
Yeah.
And, Beatty and 80, I like your slogan. That's good.
That's
very good.
That's how I remembered. And so they always had a convention in April, I think, in Miami. And that's why Jim would like to go down.
Yeah.
And so he said, if you get up to the New York area, I'll give you a paid tryout. So Mike said, if you want to come stay at my place for a couple of weeks, and I'll take you in and we'll do it. And that couple of weeks, back then you could just extend your plane ticket. And, one of the things Mike was working on was a couple of Kung Fu covers. And he said, he had a light box and stuff. And he said, why don't you just ink this, before we go in and see what they say.
And we have that to offer. And,
sure.
If they like it, fine. They could
If
take
not,
it.
it's
We
just
still
a sample.
we still had the pencils, because he was doing just tracing
over vellum or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
sure.
on the light box, but they liked it well enough, and then the next month we did the same thing. They liked that well enough, but the problem was they didn't really have work for him.
Right. Well, and it was Jim's standard answer too. He's like, "Go over to DC and get good, get better, and then come back."
That's what he did.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Shooter.
so we did. We went over to DC, and then they kind of kidnapped Mike they'd been trying to get Mike to do some stuff for him.
Yeah,
So they kind of used Mike as a pawn.
Yeah, I took John over, and then they said, "Yeah, we like his stuff." They said, so he can ink anything you draw here. Just to try to get me to come over.
Yeah.
And
did you do anything over there?
Well, what I did when they said that was I just went to Len Wein's office. He was doing that anthology Mystery in Space or
Certainly.
something.
Yeah.
So I just said, Len, give us an 8-page story here, so that I'll pencil it, John can ink it, and which he did, and we did, and then
I kept getting these small, anywhere from 6 to 8 page jobs, and
but without me.
Right.
The thing is once I did that one thing, and then they liked his stuff well enough that they weren't after me anymore. They were using it.
Oh, that's great.
Using it
and so it's still at the DC anthologies, I would imagine.
And then I'd planned another trip up. It had probably been, I don't know if it was quite a year or so, but I planned to go back up just to get that connection. We'd go in the office again. And I was out, and I came home, and my mom had said, someone from D.C. called you. And so I wrote it down, and it was Karen Berger. And she was Len Wein's assistant at the time. And she basically said, we want to offer you Justice League. I called it around 7:30, and I'm surprised they answered, but she answered it. And she said, the reason we're calling is, Len wanted to offer you JLA over George Payred's Breakdowns. And she said, we can send the pages out. And
pretty good for a new guy.
Yeah, not bad, man. Exactly. Great assignment. Holy cow.
Yeah.
I think my flight was planned for like Monday, and this was like a Thursday or something. I said, don't send them. I said, I got plane tickets. I'm coming up Monday. So I called Mike and said, hey, can we go by D.C. when you pick me up?
That's awesome.
Yeah. So.
Well, and I looked at the time because I feel horrible. We're getting the origin story, which is awesome, but we're missing the hits. So Captain America, what a great run, and absolutely yes, and thank you for the smattering of applause. I completely agree, but I had nothing to do with it. But no, truly, Jan DeMatteis doing the great writing and everything, and truly, that's when I discovered your guys' work, and especially that wonderful Red Skull story, that culminated in 300 and everything.
Yeah, well, both of us grew up as Captain America fans, and no bigger Captain America fan than Mark Grunwald, the editor, and that being the case, I mean, I had. That was one of the characters I did want to take a stab at, and I let that office know it, and so it just came about that it opened, the title opened up, and I grabbed it, and my plan was always to have John ink me on Captain America because he liked Captain America as well. They were in the middle of a 1-year contract with Quick Draw Studios, one of these lots of many hands inkers studios, and so they were locked in. I had my first 6 issues then just had to be inked by them, but I let the editor know that I wanted John to come on board after that because he was kind of like my homegrown inker at that point, you know. So
Mike had, directed me to. For your
back
in that day, I mean, Mike is a penciler. He turned the pencils in, and they just gave it to whatever inker,
And Mike was obviously guiding you to bring out the best of Mike's pencils with your inks.
Yeah. Yep.
So sure, I understand that. Phil Hester and Andy Parks had that kind of relationship.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's and then John, who had never given up a book before because he was a new guy, when it came time, when the 6 months passed, then I told him, all right, you get, now you're on Captain America, as get off whatever you're doing at DC, and he had to.
Yeah, so I called up. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know just to come out and tell him the truth, I guess. So I kind of did. It was the truth with I told them that I was offered Captain America by Marvel, and they were going to pay me like $5 more a page to ink it. And I said, I think I'm going to have to take that offer instead of just saying, look,
see ya.
I'm going to thank you.
Done deal. Goodbye.
Yeah.
But the worst thing, and it felt like the worst thing at the time, is Lynn said, have you said yes yet? And I panicked and I said, no. And he goes, let me get back to you by the end of the day.
Oh, boy.
And I knew what that meant.
Sure.
He was going to see.
Counteroffer.
Right. And the call came back and he said, we can't match the rate, so if you have to take... I know. I felt the same way. Every
Crisis
time the phone
averted.
rang, I was, I was just like on pins and needles.
Oh, man.
And so he said, we can't match the rate. He goes, we'd like you to stay, but we understand if you have to leave. And, man, the pressure just went off me, and I was just like, yeah, I think I want to go do Captain America.
Oh, my God, yeah. Well, amazing run. And were you guys together for the 3 years that...
For
Captain America run.
Yeah, right.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, right. Till we both got off at the same time because we were asked to do Secret Wars.
Indeed.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and that was another thing. It was. Mike called me about this Secret Wars thing, and it was like, we're going to have to give up Cap. And I think we both were kind of like, it was like, that's our character, but...
I understand.
But I said,
it's established, and you guys were obviously doing so great. And this event,
right?
This is before there were events. I mean, this was kind of the first modern event.
Yeah, this was 12 issues too. So it was like, Cap was like, I think as long as we wanted to do it.
Were you guys worried, given that Jim Shooter, who was also the editor-in-chief, writing the book, added pressure because maybe Jim is a de facto editor as well on this?
Well, we kind of knew that would happen, that he would be, but, I didn't have any particular worries until it all started.
Until the first issue saw print, and we saw the changes.
And then, but that thing, the biggest problem with that book is it was late from issue 1 to issue 12, basically.
Wow.
He just wasn't, the plots were late. And his excuse is that he was editing every other book in the Marvel Universe. Sure. All right, I'll hand him that, but it's still made for a less than perfect experience. Having to draw books, just rush, the last couple of weeks to get them out. And, we've told the stories, there were a couple of times, including the last double-size issue, where Marvel would rent a suite in New York City, and I'd go in there, and an ink or two would be in there, letter, color, everybody, and we'd have to stay up all night and do like the last 5-6 pages.
Wow.
Something like that of an issue.
Yeah. Holy
just
cow.
Crank it out.
Jeez.
So not the best conditions, for doing your best work. And both of us, and John was still in Florida, so instead of having to mail pages back down to him, if it was that rushed, and Rubenstein was one of the regular, fill-in page guys. Okay. Who was the other guy that I keep forgetting?
Art Nichols?
Yeah, Art Nichols.
Were they crusty bunker guys? That was the
they
term.
Were just guys that were in the office.
Waiting for something to come in.
Okay.
That, needed to be put out that day or something.
Yeah.
Because this was also back in the time where all the coloring, it wasn't computer, so it took a little longer, I guess, on the coloring to hand color it and do the stuff.
Absolutely.
So it was a kind of a foul experience in a way, and we were kind of depressed about it because, we were thinking, well, gosh, this isn't our best work, and this isn't going to go over as well as everyone hoped. But then we were proven wrong once it was being published. then they had to go to second printings, and it was like wildly popular, and we're shocked, of course, that it's that popular.
Absolutely.
But at the end of the day, the thing that makes me happy, and I'm happy that it was popular, obviously, and but of all the events like that, the maxi series or something, there's never been another one that attracted that many new readers to the industry. That's all I've ever heard for the last 30 years at conventions, and there's never one that I don't hear it. This is the one that got me in. This cover 1, cover 8, the new Spider-Man.
Yeah,
suit,
I want to talk about that. Absolutely,
whatever.
Yes.
The Doom cover. I mean, so many people came in with that series, and that's the real success of Secret Wars, is how many new readers it brought in
and maintained.
Yeah. They stayed. Absolutely.
It wasn't like the speculator.
Mm-hmm. Oh no, absolutely.
90s where people got in, and as soon as they couldn't get,
Yeah, no, it wasn't that. These were just kids who were loving that stuff, and they discovered the Marvel Universe, and they stayed. And
that's fantastic.
So there's there have been other popular series, but none that can claim that or that had that result. Bringing that many people in.
If people have questions, please line up at the microphone, because I as I said, I'm happy to continue, and I will continue because there's still a lot to go over. But I want to give you guys the opportunity to ask questions as well from the guys. But we mentioned the Spider-Man outfit. As I've heard you say at other conventions, there's a lot of misunderstanding and misinformation about who created the Black Spider-Man costume.
Yeah,
and it's it's right here on the dais and everything. So I want at least on my podcast, we're going to get it right.
Well, so there's the internet is as we all know, is an ocean of misinformation. So and anybody gets on there and says something, then you've got a number of people that are going to believe it, I guess.
Sure.
But here's in terms of the costume, the real
genesis,
the history of it is that there was a kid. Now, I didn't know any of this back in the day. I was sitting home, and Jim just said, Spider-Man's going to need a new costume. Go design it. That was all I knew at the time.
Yeah.
What I didn't know is that a year before Secret Wars, kid Randy Schuler had submitted a plot hoping to become a writer, and Jim saw some potential in it, and he let him try to redo it, flesh it out a little bit, but didn't go anywhere. He wasn't ready, and but in that plot there was written a scene where Mr. Fantastic made a new costume for Spider-Man. That's all that I know. That now that was in that plot, and that part of the plot stayed in the back of Jim's mind, I guess, for that year. And then when the Secret Wars thing came along, and he was trying to figure out how these characters would change, either emotionally, physically, whatever, then he brought it out, and he really brought it out at exactly the right time, because had it not been on an alien planet that it happened, then it wouldn't have blown up like it did. We wouldn't have seen Venom.
Right.
So good for him. But like I said, I wasn't privy to any of that information at the time. So give this kid, I guess, credit for planting a seed in the back of Jim's mind that grew just at the right time, sprouted at the right time. But now, and I think the timeline was that we'll call it like Amazing 251 and all the books that month. Everybody at the end, or all the people that did go, were transported to Battle World, and then Amazing 252 and all the books that month, they're all coming back. And so Secret Wars in Marvel continuity happened in that month, but in publishing continuity, it took 12 months to tell the Secret Wars story.
Sure.
So all these other books, and that's why I had to go design a number of things prior to doing Secret Wars, so that these other artists then would have, or would know what changes these characters went through, know how to portray them when they did come back from Battle World. But that's not seen by readers. They don't see me designing the costume. They don't see all that. They saw mine 8 months later, basically.
Was it Rick Leonardi that first had an issue come out with the costume, or?
No, it was Amazing 252 would have been the first one. That was Ron Frenz.
Ron Frenz, okay.
And because everybody saw it first there, then there's there's a lot of information on the internet saying that, well, Ron Friends was the first guy, he created that costume. The Rick Leonardi thing is that they're apparently, and again, I didn't know this, but apparently my sketches for that design were not in standard turnaround, front, back, side view thing.
Every angle of a character.
Yeah. I mean, I had them, but they might have been a half a figure, so I was doing close-ups, details, something like that. So I think they had Rick do that so that when these other artists would, the typical thing was to give a turnaround to artists, and and then they could more know how to portray the character.
Sure.
Yeah. So I guess that's probably how this Rick Leonardi turnaround came about, but they published that in Marvel Age, and they colored the white elements red in the Marvel Age.
Okay. Yes.
So now on the internet, Rick Leonardi created the costume, and the costume was supposed to be red in the beginning, but then we changed our minds, and made it white. But it was never. It was just no one told the colorists, the Marvel Age colorists, what to do. They just.
You assume that red's going to be part of Spider-Man's makeup in some way.
Probably.
So, especially the spider part of it and everything.
Mm-hmm. But so there's three pieces of misinformation, out on the internet, and I'll give you one anecdote for Rick Leonardi, because it was only about a year ago that I was at a New Jersey convention. He was there too, and he came up to me and he just started apologizing profusely.
He
says,
30 years later.
I didn't know, he says, I didn't tell them or something, but it wasn't that. I mean, I think he was aware of that too. But in that program book, this just tells you, you make a little noise on the internet, people are going to believe it.
Sure.
They had him down as creator of the black costume.
Wow.
In the program book. I'm at the show, that program book has him credited, for the black costume, and he just couldn't apologize enough, for me. He was trying to convince me that it wasn't his idea, to put that credit on there.
Sure.
But so there it is. All that's out there, and then I saw the Randy Schueller was on the internet trying to take credit for the black costume. Now, to everybody else's credit, Ron or Rick or none of those are attempting to take credit for it. Randy's looking for credit for it, I guess.
Oh boy! Wow.
And here's the last anecdote.
Yeah, please.
And I told and I'm not going to get on the internet and start trying to correct it, because I'll die having corrected this amount of 1%, of the misinformation out there. So I'm not going to worry about it. But I told Jim, and this was only a couple months ago, not too long ago, that I was at a convention with Shooter, and I just saw one of those comics news sites. They were talking about the new Solo Venom movie that's coming out.
Yes.
And it was then when they mentioned Venom, and then they had the creator, who created it, and the first person listed was Randy Schueller.
Oh boy.
And then David Michelinie, who really came up with Venom.
Yes.
He was there second. I think I was third. I think Todd McFarlane was on there. And Shooter was nowhere to be seen.
Wow.
And I showed it to Jim. I said, Jim, here's what, because we had talked about it anyway. I said, here's what I was talking about, Jim. I said, you go on the internet, you make a little noise, everybody's going to believe it. I said, look at this, look who created Venom. I said, look who's first, And I said, I'll put money down right now that, I'll make the bet with you right now. I said, when that movie comes out, I'm going to bet that Randy Schueller's on somewhere on the credits, in that movie, probably, and stuff. But just because he's making noise.
Sir, you got a question?
First of all, thanks for coming out to the con. Appreciate it, guys. I have a question. Whenever I see pencilers and inkers who have worked a lot together, the pencilers, it kind of varies of what they give the inker. Sometimes it's very detailed sketches and the inker fills it in. Sometimes it's stick figures and the inker just knows what the penciler wants and draws the whole thing. I was curious for you two, how does that relationship work? Like, what kind of pencils do you end up giving John? And then how much is the ink and how much is actually drawn and filled in and everything like that. So.
Well, you're probably aware that there's full pencils and then there's breakdowns, and I've done both ways. If I'm doing full pencils, I don't think they've changed that much. My style develops a little bit, over the years, and so I just put that down. John inks. John's going to be more true to my full pencils, obviously, but he's worked over breakdowns and he kind of knows what to do with those as well. There's many inkers, that I trust with just breakdowns.
Gotcha. Very cool. With the time we have left, because we have Craven's Last Hunt, and I want to ask about Circle of Blood. I'll bother you about Craven's Last Hunt because Bob was the anchor on Craven, correct?
Right.
So
okay.
Circle of Blood, John, were you on Circle of Blood?
Yeah, right.
All right, excellent. Uh-huh. I got to tell you, as someone who was new to the direct market, it was a big shock when the first issue came out and I couldn't get it because everyone had pre-ordered it.
Yeah.
And we had that situation where, no, I'm sorry, it's sold out. I'm like, it's supposed to come out today.
Yeah.
You just opened it noon. How can it already be sold out?
Yeah.
So what was that like as creators and everything, having such a hot book? And obviously building on all this, collective body of work that you guys had built to that point.
It didn't surprise me that much because I thought Stephen's, for me personally, I thought his story was his take on the Punisher was perfect and completely in line with what I thought the Punisher would be. And you may not know, but Steve had been shopping that plot around for at least a year, maybe over a year, and Marvel did not want to do it.
Really? Too violent?
No, they just felt like the Punisher as a character couldn't support his own book.
Not big enough. Isn't that interesting?
Couldn't support his own book.
Wow.
And and I said, man, this story's so good, and I said, well, let's try again. I'll connect myself to the story. Let's go. You'll have a team, and of course John, would be on it as well, and because I just came off Secret Wars, I think they threw us a bone. That was like their attitude. It's like,
wow.
Well, all right, you guys, you just go do it. And they were sure still that it would fail. And I'm thinking, what's wrong with these people? Because Stallone and Schwarzenegger running around with big guns, making big money in the movies. It was the perfect time for the Punisher.
No question.
Perfect time. And and as you pointed out, it was the perfect time, but it just like completely sold out. Second printing, third printing, whatever. It just went crazy, and it didn't surprise me that much. I thought it should.
I want to let the gentleman get his question before we have to stop.
This question's kind of obscure, but I've always wondered about it for years. In the third issue of Punisher, there's a panel where you've got a truck, and it's the Daily Planet, and it's a reference to Howard Chaykin. Can you explain what that was? I can't find an answer anywhere.
That may have been Bruzenak, the letterer, may have put something on the side of it. Because he... Didn't he let Howard's work a lot?
Probably. I think so.
I think Ken Bruzenak lettered a lot of Howard's work. So it's probably... Because I loved it when I got pages lettered by... He's one of my favorite letterers because... He would do all the street signs and all the other stuff, so I wouldn't have to worry about inking that. So probably if there's something, it was probably up to him. He probably threw something on that if Howard read it, he would, So
I gotta wonder for another.
I liked Howard well enough, but not to put his name on trucks or signs or anything.
We there's, if I can, in the graphic novel Big Nothing, Verta May's brothel. That's my mom. That's a little Easter egg. A lot of people don't know it. My mom's 90. We did ask for her permission. I said, hey, Mom, we're doing this graphic novel. It's a brothel. Can we name it after you just for fun? He's like, oh, yeah, whatever. She's like, Mike's a son to her, too. So, it's she's like, yeah, go ahead. And then Ivy's Casino is Jim Ivy, who used to have the Cartoon Museum, which was basically a comic shop, and he dealt in original art and stuff, and he also put on an Orlando convention every year. And we always would play cards with him, and he loved playing cards. So when we had a casino scene, Mike and I were like, we got to, get Ivy's Casino on there.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And think of how important the Punisher franchise was to Marvel in the late 80s and early 90s in 3 books and, just constant product and stuff. And now, again... it's coming up. In the closing seconds, what do you guys think of the movies and the TV stuff that's going on with Marvel?
Well, the movies were terrible, but the Netflix thing I like.
Yeah.
But also know that between the last movie, Warzone, and the Daredevil season, that the Punisher character came back under the Marvel Studios umbrella. So I knew that would be helpful to the character. So I think, I think John Bernthal's great. And I also think there's a little bit of luck because he came in at the right time. Those Ray Stevenson and Thomas Jane, they're great actors. But if you surround them, with garbage, they can't lift it up.
Couldn't agree more.
Not going to happen.
And I agree with you with Barenthal too. I mean, he's a natural, and it's so perfect for the character.
Yeah.
And I think we're in for some good stuff. And I hope you guys are in for some decent royalty checks.
Oh no! Yeah,
something.
I wish.
Something.
Yeah, no, we're not going to have that.
Are we done? Unfortunately. Oh man, I'm sorry, guys.
I thought you saw me earlier.
Oh, okay. I didn't see it, but thank you very much, and really, guys, thank you for the great contributions you made to comics, and thanks everyone for your listening.
Got to get these guys back. It was a real pleasure meeting them and talking to John Beatty and Mike Zeck. I saw Mike after the convention had ended that night before we all flew back, and he was relaxed, and we agreed that we had a great conversation and need to pick things up and talk more about the career of Mike Zeck. So, man, I'm telling you, you only get 45 minutes, and it goes by way too fast. But I really wanted these guys to tell their story, and especially how they broke in, because I think every breaking in story is unique, and you can tell from John's side of the story, and Mike's for that matter. Plus an opportunity to talk about Charlton Comics. Are you kidding me? Of course I had to talk about that. It's an interesting company that, Dick Giordano and, and now I'm blanking and everything. Jim Aparo started over there, John Byrne, and really, if you read the Charlton Comics story, some really amazing artists and writers work there for nothing, for peanuts. It was a really cheap shop. But, that's kind of where they started. And we're able to continue and do more things at DC and Marvel and the other companies and stuff. So it was a pleasure to hear Mike and John's story on today's Word Balloon. Thanks again for listening today, brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners and InStockTrades.com, where, hell, you want to see some great volumes and stuff? You can get the Shang-Chi Master of Kung Fu Omnibus featuring Doug Munch and Mike Zeck. This is Volume 3. It is 50% off, and it's just $62.50. You can get Mike Zeck's Classic Marvel Stories Artist Edition hardcover. This is from IDW, and it features writers like J.M. DeMatteis and others, but it's Mike and John's work. It looks like there's some Captain America in there, among some other great stories. It's 30% off. It's just $84. Let's see, what else have we got here? There's, of course, Punisher, Back to War. The omnibus hardcover, that's 42% off, and this includes Circle of Blood. We talked about that wonderful miniseries between he and Stephen Grant, and this is Mike and John doing what they did best, and it's got a great cover by them as well. 42% off, it's just $58. There's a lot more Mike Zeck work. There's Damned, which came out from Boom Studios, and that was Steve and Mike back together again, and it's another great crime story. That's 30% off, just $11.89. There's Deathstroke the Terminator. We talked about, Mike's cover work for that. But, and there's several volumes of Deathstroke right now that have Mike Zeck covers. But those volumes are all 42% off and just $8.69. Some of the great stuff from Mike Zeck and John Beatty, available now at InStockTrades.com. Check it out for yourself. Great deals and great prices at InStockTrades.com. Thanks for listening to Word Balloon. Again, we're less than a week away from New York Comic Con. I'm psyched. I hope to see you there. I've got a couple more releases coming out before the start of New York Comic Con, and I'll be back with more content. We still got Joe Rubenstein to give you from Salt Lake City, and some other great conversations as well, as I introduce somebody that has been a friend of Word Balloons for a long time, but never been on an official Word Balloon podcast. And also we reach back with an old comic journalism friend, and have a great conversation about what's going on today as well. Those are my teases. I'll give you more details when we pop out the next episodes. So until then, thanks for listening. Word Balloon is a copyright feature of Shaky Productions, copyright 2017.